What we're going to be doing today is learning how to simplify rational expressions. So what we're actually going to start with is simplifying fractions, just so we can get kind of an idea of what is going on. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to simplify this fraction here, 28 divided by 32. And what you really want to do here is figure out what the factors of each of these are, and then figure out how they're going to cancel out. So if I'm looking at 28, I know that the factors of 28 are 7 and 4. Okay. And I know that the factors of 32, there are multiple factors of 32, but I want it to cancel out with one of these factors of 28. So 32 is not divisible by 7, but 32 is divisible by 4. Okay, so we're going to do 4 and 9. 4 and 8, sorry, 4 and 8. Okay, so now that we have reduced this fraction into each of their factors, we're just going to cancel out what we see. Okay, so we're going to cancel out these 4's here, and we're going to be left over with 7 eighths. Okay, so this reduce is going to be 7 eighths. Okay, so let's move on to a slightly more complicated example, but not too bad. Okay, so I call this a pre-example because it's not actually what we're doing today yet, but you'll see. Okay, so example number 1, simplifying x to the third divided by x to the fourth. So on top, we have 3 x's, and on the bottom, we have 4. All right, and we're going to do the exact same thing that we did with the first problem, which means we're just going to cancel out the terms on the top and the bottom. So we can actually cancel out 3 of these x's here, and we're left with 1 x on the bottom. A lot of people like to say that this is equal to x, but this is actually equal to 1 over x, because anything divided by itself, like when we're canceling it out, what that really means is that it's becoming 1. Okay, so the number 1. All right, so this is going to be 1 over x. Okay, so moving on to some other examples. Example number 2. Now we're getting into a little bit more complex, so we're combining the numbers and the exponents here. Okay, so what I'm first going to do is I'm going to rewrite 70 as 7 times 10. And I'm going to rewrite x squared as x times x. Okay, I'm not going to do this every single time, but I think it's really nice to see what's exactly is happening here. And then on the bottom, I want it to cancel out with one of these factors of 70. So I'm going to use 7 and 3 for 21. And then I have 3 x's, so I'm just going to write x times x times x. And now I'm going to cancel out my terms on top and bottom. So my 7's cancel, and 2 of my x's are going to cancel here. So what you're going to be left with is just 10 on the top and 3x on the bottom. Okay, so let's do another one. Example number 3. This one I'm going to show you how I just kind of do this in my head. So I know that 60 is divisible by 5. It's 12 times 5. So I know that that 5 is going to go away, and that this 60 is going to become a 12. Okay, and I know that there are 4 x's on top and 1 on the bottom. So one of these x's is going to be canceled out. So this is going to become x to the third. Okay, so my answer to this problem is really going to be x to the third divided by 12. Okay, so again, all that I did is I crossed out the 5 because I knew that that was going to cancel out, and then I wrote what the 60 would become. Since 60 is 12 times 5, and the 5 canceled out, it would become 12. And then I knew that there were 4 x's on top and 1 on the bottom, and one of those would cancel out, so it would become x to the third. If you like this way, you can use this. If you like the other way better, you can use that. Okay, so let's go on to a little bit more complicated. And I'm going to do 4 of these examples just so that you can get a complete idea of what's happening. So we're going to do the same thing that we've been doing up at the top, which is factoring our terms. Okay, so up at the top, we're factoring numbers. Now we're actually going to be factoring expressions. So we're going to factor the top and the bottom here of this. The first step in any factoring is to see if there's something that they have in common. Okay, so we're only looking up top right now. each of these terms have an x in them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out one of the x's, and then I'm going to write what's left over. So whenever I took out one of the x's here, I'd just be left with x. And whenever I took out the x here, I would just be left with 1. Okay, so that is only the top factored. That's only this. Okay, so now let's factor the bottom. Hopefully, factoring is starting to become a little bit more natural to you, but if not, you can still do the headphones. So I'm going to put the 1 in front of the x and do 1 times positive 8. 1 times 8 is 8. And then I'm just going to write 2 factors of 8 that add to give me 9. Okay, factors of 8 are 2 and 4, and 1 and 8. So hopefully you see here that 1 and 8 are what's going to be your factors. So since there was a 1 in the front, we're going to take our shortcut and we're just going to say x plus 1 times x plus 8. All right, so this is what we're trying to get to here. And I'm just going to show you that we factored that one into this. So we're factoring the top separately from the bottom, but we're still leaving it as a fraction. So now what we're going to do is the same thing that we did in the other problems. We're going to cancel out things that are on the top and the bottom. There's an x on the top, but there's not an x by itself on the bottom, so that's not going to cancel out. But what is on the top and the bottom is this x plus 1. Okay, so that x plus 1 is what's going to cancel out. And notice there's no x plus 8 on the top and the bottom. So our answer is just x over x plus 8. Okay, so again, we're doing the same thing that we did up top. So we're factoring the top and the bottom, and then we're canceling out what is on the top and the bottom. Okay, let's try another example. I think it's easiest to see through examples with this. Okay, this one we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to factor the top, and then we're going to factor the bottom. Okay, so the top here we have x squared minus 9. Hopefully whenever you see something like a 9, you think that's a perfect square, like 3 times 3. And notice that there is a subtraction symbol on the inside here. So that means that this is going to be a difference of squares, okay, because it's x squared and 3 squared. Okay, so let me just rewrite this out how I've been writing it. I always write it like this: x squared minus 3 squared. And then we'll go down to our difference of squares after that. So we're starting to factor the top. We haven't factored it completely yet. And now we're going to factor the bottom. Okay, so on the bottom, there's a 1 in front of the x squared. That means that this is going to be easy. 1 times negative 12 is negative 12. And then I want 2 factors of negative 12 that add to give me 1, because there's a 1 in front of that x there. Okay, so factors of 12 are 1 and 12, 2 and 6, and 3 and 4. So hopefully you see that since this is a 1, we're going to be using 3 and 4 here. One of them has to be a negative number, and this is a positive 1, so that means it's going to be 4 and negative 3. Okay, 4 minus 3 is 1, and 4 times negative 3 is negative 12. Again, since there's a 1 in the front, we can just jump straight to the answer, or to the factor form. X plus 4 times x minus 3, because that was a negative 3 there. Okay, so again, this is the bottom factored. And we weren't quite done factoring the top yet, so let's just go ahead and do that. Since I'm using my difference of squares, it's going to be x plus 3 times x minus 3. All right, and on the bottom, we still have x plus 4, x minus 3. All right, again, this is my bottom factored, and this is my top factored. So hopefully you can now see that this is all factored, and we can begin to cancel things out. There is no x plus 3 on top and bottom, so we can't cancel that out. But there is an x minus 3 on top and bottom, so we're going to cancel that out. And there is no x plus 4 on the top. So our answer here is just going to be x plus 3 divided by x plus 4. All right, and you can write parentheses around them if you want. Usually whenever I write my final answer here, I don't write parentheses around them. But it's really up to you. Okay, so this is going to be your answer here. So another example. Hopefully you're starting to see the pattern here. We're going to factor the top and bottom again. So this one we're actually going to have to do headphones twice. So I have a 1 in the front. That means this is going to be easy. And I'm doing 1 times 15. So I want two factors of 15 to add to give me -8. All right, factors of 15 are 1 and 15 and 3 and 5. So here we're going to be using 3 and 5 to get to 8. And it's a -8, so we're going to use -3 and -5. Okay, -3 times -5 is 15, and -3 plus -5 is -8. So this top is just going to factor as x minus 3 times x minus 5. All right, moving on to the bottom. There's a 1 in front of the x, and we're doing 1 times -24. All right, so two factors of -24 that add to give me +5. Factors of 24 are 2 and 12. That's not going to get us to 5. 1 and 24. 4 and 6. Okay, 4 and 6 aren't going to get us to 5, but 3 and 8 will get us to 5. Okay, we want +5, so we want the bigger number to be positive. So it's going to be 8 and -3. 8 minus 3 is 5. 8 times -3 is -24. So now I can just write this straight into my factored form because there was a 1 in the front. It's going to be x plus 8 times x minus 3. Okay, now that our top and bottom is completely factored, now we can cancel things out. So hopefully you see now that on the top and the bottom there is an x minus 3. Okay, it doesn't matter if they're directly on top of each other or not. All that matters is that one is on the top and one is on the bottom. Okay, so here the x minus 3's are going to cancel out, and we're only going to be left with x minus 5 on top and x plus 8 on the bottom. All right, I'm going to do one last example, and then I think you guys will be good. So moving on to example number 7. I'm going to show you sort of what I do in my head, but again, you don't have to do it this way. You can do it the way that we've been doing it before. So factoring in my head, I usually go, okay, 1 and -6. I almost always do the headphones just to make sure. So I want two factors of -6 to add to give me -1. I know that factors of 6 are 1 and 6. That's not going to give me -1. And I know that other factors are 2 and 3. 2 and 3 will get me to -1. I want the bigger number to be negative since it is -1 instead of +1. So it's going to be x minus 3 times x plus 2. But again, if you need this step, you can do this as well. All right, and it's going to be -3 and +2. Okay, now the bottom. This one is a little bit more complicated, only because it's different than the headphones. So a lot of people get kind of confused whenever they get to something like this. This type of factoring is actually a little bit easier. Okay, so again, the first rule of factoring is asking yourself, is there anything that these two terms have in common? In this case, there is. Okay, so this one is 4, this one has -12. Notice that 12 is divisible by 4, so I can actually pull out a 4 here. And also notice this one has 3 x's, this one has 4 x's. Okay, so they actually have 3 x's in common. All right, you always take the lowest number of x's there. So they have 3 x's in common. And then we're just going to write what's left over in parentheses. So I'm dividing out the 4, so that's going away. And I'm taking 3 x's away, so I'm going to be left with 1x. And then over here, I'm doing -12 divided by 4, which will give you -3. And all of the x's are being taken away. Okay, so this is going to be your factored form of the bottom. Again, people will try to do headphones on these type of problems, but really you need to ask yourself, is there anything that I can take out first? Okay, so now you can see that on the top and the bottom, there is an x minus 3. So you're just going to be left with x plus 2 divided by 4x x to the third. Okay, so let me show you what this looks like in your assignment. Okay, it's going to be the exact same thing that we've been doing. You're just reducing the fraction. And you can look at the solution and get a new problem. It looks like there aren't any videos for these, unfortunately, but it looks like there's some pretty good explanations in Delta Math. Okay, so here you can see that the x to the fourth would cancel out, and you'd just be left with 9/5. Okay, and the other type of problems that you're going to be doing are ones like we just did. I actually just worked this problem for you. Okay, so same type of thing. You're just going to be factoring the top, factoring the bottom, and then canceling some things out. Again, if you get confused with these type of problems, you can click Show Solution, and it will give you a nice explanation for how to factor the top and bottom and cancel the common factors. Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope that this online learning is going well, hopefully. But please let me know if there's anything. You guys know the drill. Okay, have a nice day.